The Champions League semi-final stage is set after Man City disposes of Bayern Munich and Inter Milan disposes of Benfica, the Portuguese team. So we have it there. Real Madrid and Man City once again will face against each other. And we have a Derby de la Madonnina, the AC Milan against Inter Milan. We'll see each other over again. A third time in Champions League history should be fun. We'll have an Italian team for the first time since 2016, 2017 in the final. Luis Miguel Echegaray, it's great to be back, and it's great to see my friend Shaka Hislop in the house. Shaka, how are you, my friend? Give me your reaction after what you just saw today.
I'm doing well, LME. Listen, I thought we wanted to see how the two teams who were trailing, Bayern Munich and Benfica, how they kind of come out of the blocks, try to deal with what was ultimately an uphill task, very different task for both. Bayern at home, their fans behind them, Benfica on the road, going to Milan. That was always going to be a very tough ask. In the end, it played out kind of how you would expect in terms of results, in terms of who goes through, even if, well, the scoreline in one from Milan maybe didn't really reflect Inter's dominance. And I thought, similarly, the scoreline from Munich maybe didn't reflect how much better, particularly in the first 45 minutes, Bayern were than Manchester City.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll have Tom Hamilton, our very own Tom Hamilton, joining us in a few minutes. He's actually there at the Allianz Arena. I know that he wants to get busy asking his questions. He'll join us for his thoughts. But Shaka, some very good points there, because obviously after that emphatic performance, let's focus on Man City. We'll talk about the other teams in a second. But after that emphatic performance in the first leg against Bayern Munich at the Etihad, there was no way that was going to be replicated, especially at the Allianz Arena, where Bayern can also be very strong. However, there were some moments where City really, especially in the early stages, Shaka, didn't do themselves any favor. Bayern really should have taken the lead.
Yeah, we've seen Pep Guardiola and Manchester City do this a lot. At times, John Stones dropping in what looked like a back four, or shall we call it a full back four, but then stepping up into midfield, which he did often in the first half. And I never thought that City looked that comfortable. Not necessarily with the back three as opposed to the back four, but how high up the park the midfield were pressing. The midfield were trying to press Bayern well into their own half, and that allowed for a lot of space in behind. And Kingsley Coman, regardless of which side he drifted onto, found acres to run in behind. Clever little through balls where we're able to pick him out. Nathan Ake in particular had a very tough time in dealing with Coman's pace. And I thought Bayern Munich maybe could count themselves a little bit unlucky not to go in the break ahead. That being said, Bayern Munich had a couple of scares themselves. That, but for half a yard, a foot and a half, maybe, they could have been down to 10 men. But for a missed penalty by none other than Erling Haaland. I think he was only doing that just to prove that he's human. I say it tongue in cheek. It could have been so much worse. But in terms of the balance of play, as maybe opposed to those razor thin margins in front of the Bayern Munich goal, I thought Bayern were by far the better of the two, and City needed to adjust. And I thought Pep Guardiola did that. I thought what you saw in the second half is maybe not a readjustment of the formation, but that midfield line started to defend a whole lot deeper. That didn't allow the kind of space that Kingsley Coman was enjoying, or Leroy Sané were enjoying in the first half. It made things far more compact defensively. And while, yes, Bayern still have a lot of talent and still created a lot of opportunities, I thought City looked far more comfortable, or at least the threat from Bayern didn't look as grave as it did in the first 45.
Yeah, it was pretty much a game where maybe the unsung heroes took over the headlines. Rodri, I remain amazed at how amazing he really is, Shaka Hislop. What a midfielder, because Jamal Musiala had a pretty poor game, and it wasn't really not all his fault. It was because Rodri was doing a fantastic job. He's like a Mercedes-Benz G500, Shaka, Rodri. He protects, He delivers, and he's so smooth doing it. He's very important for this Man City team.
I'll have to take your word for it, LME. I have no experience of a G-Wagon 500, whatever it's.
My cousin once invited me on one of them.
Yeah,
I don't
okay.
own one. That's
All right. We'll just go with that. Your cousin's Mercedes G-Wagon, shall we? But yes, he's certainly an upgrade on my Ford Fusion Hybrid. I guess we can settle on that. Listen, Rodri continues to. He's an incredible footballer, and I thought that was needed in that midfield, where Haaland was set so high up the park, and again the adjustment needed in terms of defending against Bayern Munich, but also providing that service, that ball into Haaland or into De Bruyne in good position to link up with Erling Haaland. Those little balls that don't really get you on the stat sheet. It doesn't get you an awful lot by way of assists or certainly of statistical recognition, shall we call it. But it's absolutely vital that the likes of De Bruyne gets the ball in the right positions, gets the ball in a way that he can weave his own magic. And I thought you saw that. Added to that, I thought defensively Manchester City, their midfield was so much better in the second half and dealt with all that Bayern threw at them for the most part.
Yeah, it's the type of Man City performance that just gets better and better, obviously, due to that very strong midfield as well. Well, Shaka, Luis Miguel Echegaray here, but we're joined now by Tom Hamilton, who's actually right there at the Allianz Arena. I don't know if it's quiet or loud. I don't know what the sentiment is with Bayern Munich fans. Tom, it's been a really weird sort of season for Bayern, right? Obviously, they started with Julian Nagelsmann, and Thomas Tuchel comes in. Then we've got the Sadio Mane, Leroy Sané situation. Then obviously today's match, bowing out of the Champions League. What did you make out of their performance today against Manchester City?
I'll tell you what, it's freezing here. So it is noisy, but it's also freezing. So, yeah. Overall, I think, Bayern was probably better of the two teams tonight. But, that first leg, Thomas Tuchel yesterday was telling us that they needed a footballing miracle. And they did their best. That first half, Nathan Ake had a horrible time against Kingsley Coman, but they really missed the number 9 today. Like someone, Eric Choupo-Moting aside, someone of the quality of their old boy Lewandowski, they just time and time again they got in behind that City backline, but just couldn't quite find that finishing touch. So it was a strange atmosphere. Like the fans were definitely up for it. Tuchel gave them the rallying call yesterday, and the atmosphere for the first half was brilliant. But when Haaland scored in the second half, you could feel like the whole balloon deflating here. But overall, I think it's probably a step forward for Bayern tonight. We saw a bit more urgency. We saw a bit more class from them. Tuchel was definitely up for it, judging by his antics on the touchline. So this is the sort of match that should be a blueprint for them heading forward, do you feel? The Bundesliga is still so tight at the top, 11 points for Dortmund. So they need to keep this intensity heading forward and use this as a fillip for the rest of the season.
Shaka, any questions for our very cold friend Tom Hamilton here? I know he'll love one from you. Maybe why don't you have a woolly hat on, Tom? I'm not sure about that.
I basically panicked. I didn't realise it was going to be this cold. So it was only a last-minute addition of the jumper. Had it not been for that, then it would have been a real issue tonight. But yeah, overall, I haven't seen, there's 75,000 fans here. I've never seen a stadium empty so quickly, but
wow.
They're still playing U2. Yeah, Bittersweet Symphony was being played at full time, which kind of seemed fitting, really. There you go.
Well, one of the only things that kind of came to mind here is what were the conditions like, and did they play a part? You saw a number of players slipping all game long. Upamecano going over for the Manchester City goal, just once he tried to stop quickly. And I couldn't help but wonder, but now you say it's cold there, Tom, but I didn't know if the conditions underfoot also played a part in some of the errors that we saw today.
Yeah, I think so. I think even in the warm-ups, like City were sort of doing their shooting drills right in front of me here, and Rodri slipped like 3 times as he tried to take a first touch past who it was. I think it was Scott Carson who was in goal at the time. But yeah, I think it was slippery. But regardless of the amount of rainfall, judging by how sort of drenched everyone is here. I mean, they were still watering the pitch before kickoff, which I always find slightly bizarre. But I mean, yeah, it did look slippery out there. You can see from now, like the pitch is pretty cut up as well. So I think it would have slipped. I mean, poor old Upamecano though. I mean, across 2 legs, he's had a horrible time, and he had that thing in the first half where he brought down Haaland only for the red card to be overturned because of the offside. He had the handball for the missed penalty, and then of course he slipped at the key time when Haaland threw on goal. So he's going to take a bit of getting over. Tuchel yesterday was speaking about him, saying, you know what, he's got so much talent, but these are the sort of mistakes you've got to eliminate from the game if you're at this sort of high level in these sort of matches. But in terms of conditions, it was slippery, I think. Certainly judging by the look of the pitch now, they're going to have an almighty amount of work to get this pitch ready again. But overall, I think, yeah, it was an interesting one. I think slips aside, it was just that lack of cutting edge for Bayern, which really, saw them sort of fall a little bit short over the 2 legs.
Yeah, a very difficult time to try and beat a Manchester City side that, as Shaka said earlier, just figures things out as the game goes along. Tom Hamilton, we know you're freezing. Get inside, talk to Thomas Tuchel and Pep Guardiola, and get home safe, my friend. Thank you so much.
Thanks, chaps.
Thanks so much for watching ESPN on YouTube. And for more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app. And for premium content and live streaming, subscribe to ESPN Plus.